Gosh, in a sense, it hardly seems possible that it's only a year since the coalition government was formed, because we have done so much over the past year. I mean, one of the first things we did when we came in was to scrap ID cards. That was one of the first pieces of legislation to go through. We've reviewed counter-terrorism legislation in relation to reducing pre-charge detention period from 28 days to 14 days, for example. We're proposing changes to the antisocial behaviour orders and try to make that simpler and less bureaucratic and easier for people to use. We've done quite a lot in the equalities arena as well. Of course, Government Equalities Office now part of the Home Office. That's a change over the last year. We've introduced our Violence Against Women Action Plan across government, which is a very important step forward as well.
I think there are three big areas where I'm really pleased with what we've done in a year. The first is on the central issue of the immigration limit, where we are now into the second month of a permanent limit for work visas, and we've also had a complete reform of the student visa system. The second big area is abolishing ID cards, which was always a particular personal passion of mine. And the third is ending child detention, which was in the coalition agreement, which people said was very difficult, but which we've now achieved, and we're close to opening the new pre-departure accommodation, which will be radically different from anywhere where children have been kept before.
I very much enjoyed working with Nick Herbert, the policing minister, on a number of the things that he's been engaged in around cutting police bureaucracy, ensuring that we're doing our bit here in the Home Office to reduce the burden of paperwork, all that red tape that stops police officers doing their job, getting out on the front line, protecting communities. And then on the other side, obviously crime mapping as well. It's quite incredible. Since we launched crime mapping, there have been around 414 million hits to the crime mapping website that gives really informative data as to what's happening in your community, what's happening on crime in your area. Certainly some of the highlights for me have been actually getting the government's drug strategy together, drawing together a number of different departments with our key themes on reducing supply, promoting recovery, and also cutting demand as well, actually changing the way that people view drugs.
I suppose if I had to say what was the most popular announcement I've made or decision I've made, it would be banning wheel clamping on private land. That seems to have been celebrated across the country, the release from cowboy clampers. And of course the Freedom Bill, which gets rid of all sorts of things but scales back vetting and barring, so people can work and no one suspects them, unless there's good reason to, of being paedophiles. There have been a whole host of things that have been achieved in this year. It's been a very exciting year.
We've started making the changes in relation to the student visa route. We've got some new legislation coming in to put in place the terrorism prevention and investigation measures, which are the replacements to control orders. Over the next few months, we'll be launching consultations on changing issues around settlement, so that people who come here on a temporary basis to the UK won't necessarily have permanent settlement rights. We're looking at changing that, and in due course changing the family visa route into the UK. Also putting through radical reforms to the police. We are putting through the most radical reforms to policing for at least half a century. And with the introduction of the directly elected police and crime commissioners, the creation of the new National Crime Agency, these are really key changes that I believe will make a real difference.